Hello, my friends. Okay, so we are starting a new project today. Our first target, is I can explore color. So we are thinking about different types of color groupings here. So we have warm colors, we have cool colors, and then something that we've talked about a lot, primary colors and secondary colors. So primary colors, we know a primary color is a color that you can't make by combining two other colors. If you want red, you have to have red. Blue, yellow. Those are my primary colors. Secondary colors I can make by combining two primaries. So I make orange by combining red and yellow. I can make green by combining blue and yellow, and I can make purple by combining blue and red. So then we also have warm colors and cool colors. So warm colors are colors that look warm. So that's about half of my color wheel are warm colors. So reds, orange, yellow, even things like pink are warm colors. Cool colors are things like blue and green and purple, the other half of my color wheel. So today we are using a material called bleeding art tissue. So it's tissue paper that when we get it wet, the color starts to come out of it. So my next target, is I can use bleeding art tissue to create an abstract painting. So an abstract painting is a painting not of a specific thing. It's not a picture of a dog or a house or a tree. It's combining shapes and colors to create a feeling. So I am using this material with a wet paintbrush, a piece of watercolor paper or nice thick paper, and the art tissue paper that's already been cut into some nice small squares. When I chose my colors, I chose cool colors. So I chose colors like purple and green and blue. So I use this material by painting some just regular old water onto my paper and then just laying the tissue paper on top. I want to make sure that it's really touching the paper so that the color will transfer from the tissue paper onto my watercolor paper. So I'm working in a small space at a time. If I don't have water there, nothing happens. Like with my purple square here, the paper wasn't wet, so nothing happened. No color transferred over. So that's why I'm working in a small space at a time. I am just painting on some water with a nice clean paintbrush, and then I am laying down some of my watercolor paper. As I'm working, I'm thinking about how my colors and my shapes that I'm using are combining. I'm not doing all my green in one space and all my blue in another space. I'm really combining those colors in a way that I think will look interesting when it's done. So right now I'm really just working on filling in any white space that I see. I don't want to leave a lot of white space. It's okay for there to be a little bit, but for the most part, I want to make sure that I have filled in all my white space. Certainly if I can put my finger down or my hand down in a space, there should be some tissue paper there. Okay, my friends, so when this is done, I'm not peeling up the tissue paper. Some of the color transfers right away, but we leave the tissue paper on this when it dries. So I leave the tissue paper right on it, I don't peel it up with my fingers, and I take it to the drying rack just like this. Okay, my friends, so this is what we're starting today, adding some patterns with a Sharpie marker. I can combine patterns to create a work of art that shows variety, and I can work carefully. So working carefully means looking at my work and moving my hand slowly. I'm moving my hand really slowly. So I will talk a little bit more about what variety means as I'm working here, but I'm just going to show you kind of a general rubric for this. So a 1 means you've basically put no variety into it. It's just one pattern that you've done across your paper. A 2, a little bit of variety. 3, you've really thought about different ways to combine shapes and lines. So this is what our artwork looks like when it's dry. I'll probably do this step for you just because it gets kind of messy if I don't. But my tissue paper is all dry now and it just kind of peels right up off the paper. We can use this paper a second time, so I'll keep it in a box. I'll probably show it to you, but your paper will probably come back to you looking like this. So let's talk a little bit about our targets for this. So I can combine patterns to create a work of art that shows variety. So variety means that there's different types of things, and they're being combined in different ways. So I am thinking about doing just like a quick little example here of some different types of patterns that I can do. Even if I'm just doing something simple like lines, I can combine them in different ways. I can make them wiggly lines. I can make them long lines or short lines. I can make them straight or curvy. I can make my line into a spiral. I can make my line become shapes into dots and stuff like that. So it really doesn't have to be a super complicated pattern for it to have variety. Really just making like one small little difference in how you're doing something can add variety to your work, making some of your lines curved and some of your lines straight. So I did like a practice paper here, and then I went and made like a quick little rubric for us. So for the one, I'm working too fast. My work is messy. I might not have even like really been looking at what I was doing as I was doing it. For the two, I do a couple different patterns, but they don't really work well together. I haven't really thought about how they're combining to be interesting. For the three, I really thought about the shape that I was filling in, so the shape of the number three, and I thought about how I could combine different patterns to make something that would be interesting. We can see that I'm working nice and slowly. I'm looking at my work as I'm working. And I'm really thinking about different ways to fill in a space. So sometimes I'm using shapes like triangles. Sometimes I'm using something like dots or lines. So with variety, that could even mean filling some spaces in, leaving some spaces blank. There's lots of different ways that I can fill up a space with something simple like lines and shapes. So I'm going to remind you again of our last target, which is working carefully or craftsmanship. So working carefully, I'm looking at my artwork. It's okay to talk to my friends while I'm working, but I need to be looking at my artwork. If I'm looking at my friend while I'm working, then I'm not putting enough of my attention onto my work. And it means moving my hand slowly. So here I am starting to think about my space, think about the empty spaces that I have and the different types of colors that I have on my paper, and I am just filling them in with some patterns that I think will look interesting. So I'm going to show you what this looks like real time for just a couple moments here, and then the video will speed up. So we can see my hand is moving nice and slowly. I'm really thinking about where I'm putting down each dot if I'm putting in dots. I'm really watching my hand slowly make lines. I know that I'm probably going to make mistakes when I'm making patterns like this, and that's okay. For this, making a mistake with a pattern is okay because I just know that I need to kind of replicate that mistake a couple different times. Like when I make my spirals here, there were places where my spiral like touched itself where I didn't really want it to. I just made it do that a couple times and it looked intentional. And then here I've sped up, so my hand is still moving slow in real life, but the video is sped up to make it look fast so we don't have to sit here for a really long time. Real time, this took me probably about a half an hour to 40 minutes to make. Yours will probably take you a little bit longer, and that is okay. What's important is that I'm really putting my best effort into my work. I'm thinking about different ways to combine lines to make an interesting pattern. So when I did mine, I felt like I really wanted to use like just a ton of different patterns on mine. But I think that as I was working, my work felt a little disorganized. So I kind of came back to the same pattern a few times in a few different places, and that gave my artwork a little bit of unity. So it made it look like it was one piece of artwork, not just like a bunch of different patterns that were put together without a lot of thought. So putting the spiral shape a few different times in my artwork, I think, is something that I enjoyed doing. I enjoy the way spirals look in general. So when I did mine, I made sure I put the spiral in a couple places. Yours doesn't have to do that. And I thought that filling in some places around the edge with a little bit of just black marker kind of made the edges look a little bit more finished. There we go. So that is what my artwork looked like it was finished. I'll remind you once again, these are my targets, combining patterns to create variety, and working nice and slowly. Okay, my friends, have fun.